Welcome to Dear Diaspora, a podcast celebrating the African diaspora and the changemakers, innovators, and entrepreneurs working to make our world a better one to live in. I'm your host, Ndulwa Kowa. Let's get started. Thank you so much for tuning in to episode 9 of Dear Diaspora. This is so exciting. I can't believe I've recorded almost 10 episodes of the podcast. I've had such great conversations with entrepreneurs and change makers and creatives across the African diaspora, and I'm so looking forward to continuing to have these conversations and to amplify, the stories of, these change makers. And so before I introduce my next guest, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. And if you're listening on any other podcasting platform, be sure to follow the podcast so that you get alerted each Sunday, every time a new episode is released. And don't forget to share this with, your friends, your family, whoever you feel is interested in, just anything that sort of has to do with the diaspora and has to do with, amplifying, our stories and entrepreneurship. Share this with them. And I'd also love to hear from you. So you can always, message me on Instagram or Facebook or email me at deardiasporashow@gmail.com. I'd love to hear what you think of the show first, and then if you have ideas or suggestions, or if you want to be on the show and spotlight, your business, or, project that you're working on, I would love that as well. So get in touch with me if you're interested. Also, quick shout out to all of you for listening and tuning in each week. I just passed the 500 download mark, which is so exciting. My next goal is to get to 1,000 downloads. So continue to listen every week and continue to spread the word about the podcast. I'm super, super thankful to all of you. And I also just set up the Dear Diaspora community Facebook page. So if you go on Facebook and type in Dear Diaspora Community, that's where you will be able to connect with other listeners, other like-minded folks who are super interested in, business and social change and entrepreneurship across the diaspora. So yes, look it up, and that's where we will continue to have, conversations about the episodes. I would love to be able to connect with you all and, get to know you all a little better. And then I will also use that to hopefully go live and things like that and interact with you all a bit more. So look it up on Facebook under Dear Diaspora Community. So my next guest is an international journalist that covers global affairs, international development, and global youth issues. She's a passionate storyteller and actually started her platform, TanTV, and it's a brand that is telling the stories that are shaping our millennial culture. She created the platform to bring together the leading voices, thought leaders, and change makers of our generation to further educate us on global issues that matter. So our conversation was so on point, and our platforms align really well. And what I love about what she does is that she tells these stories visually. So that's a super impactful way to really amplify, the work that, change makers are doing. And we had a really great conversation about her upbringing first, her coming to the U.S. At 15 and starting college, which was so phenomenal. Her mental health background and, what really inspired her to transition into, journalism and storytelling. She's been a contributor to Huffington Post and Forbes, and she all around just is really working to engage youth around the world and, spotlight the stories of those that are, really making a difference in their community. So I really love this conversation, and I hope you do too. So here is my conversation with Adedayo Fashanu. Alrighty, well, thank you so much for being on the show, Adedayo. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you, Ndo, for having me.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, so I wanted to start by asking, where are you originally from, and what's been your experience like living and working in the US?
Oh wow. I'm originally from Nigeria, Lagos, Nigeria, and experience working in the US has been interesting. Um, so I went to college over here, and right after college, I worked in the professional field. I worked in mental health actually for 5 years plus. So I was really immersed in, working, field professionally, and it was a bit challenging given the I guess the I mean at this point I'd already acclimated to the culture, right? So it's not so like brand new, just being thrown into the workforce like that, because I went to school here, but at the same time it was a bit challenging. Just I was much younger, it was still my first leg in the US, and it was challenging on every facet, dealing with co-workers, the African Americans, and when you're an African, I think it's getting better now, but the difference is there. It's just like, co-workers not really understanding who you are, and all the things that happen in the workplace when you're trying to just do your thing. So
Oh man.
yeah, so it was challenging on that front, but on the other end it was also a good, it's also been good. You've there are always good people in any environment, so it's just to find the good people and attach to them, and so that was also good. Yeah.
Oh wow. And so you said you started like in mental health. What profession were you like? What were you doing?
Yeah, I studied psychology in college, and I minored in chemistry, which is so weird, but I did because when you come here, or when I came here, it was more like aiming to be a doctor. So my parents sent me to America to become a doctor, but that didn't pan out so well. Did a couple of classes, and it just wasn't. I just didn't think I would do so well going moving forward in the field. So I was 15 years old when I started college, mind you. So it
Wow.
was really like thrown into, what are you going to become when you grow up at the age of 15? I didn't really know, but I knew that I wanted to do something, meaningful with myself. Um, but yeah, like I was working. So once I graduated from college, I got a job, and I started working as a behavioral health specialist, which is part of a treatment team, mental health outpatient treatment team. So I was a what they call BHRS then, behavioral health rehabilitation specialist. And so I worked with families and children and teenagers, and who were going through different challenges, like depression, or when the family, like going through a divorce, for instance, how it affects children and the teens, and families from abusive homes, or children from abusive homes, things like that. So I was really immersed in solving, or just being a part of a treatment team for our mental health clients, and that was really my thing. So I did that for 5 years, and it was really interesting, and also very eye-opening to see the challenges that people go through, when they're dealing with stuff, and having to be, just be a counselor for people. So that was my thing. That was what I did for a while. I was, I'm still an advocate for mental health till today because of my experience working in the field, because it's highly stigmatized generally too.
Totally. And like in every community,
Yeah.
no matter where. So, wow. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, and I'm sure the people that you worked with were super appreciative of like all the support and stuff that you provided them.
Yeah, it was always good to see a success story. The children. One of my clients that got emancipated from the system at the age of 16. That was a success story because she was coming from an abusive home. Children who graduate high school or leave middle school. It's always a good thing to see them, successful, at each point and see them grow up. So over 5, 6 years that I was in the field, I got to see a lot of families come back together just to see the end of, when they leave therapy, or not necessarily leave therapy per se, but when they just graduate, or make some, like reach some milestones in their lives, and to be a part of that was just very like, wonderful. It was such a wonderful feeling to celebrate with clients on that, on that basis. Yeah.
Totally. And so, like, how did you end up getting into like journalism? Because I know you've been like a contributor to different publications like Forbes and like Huffington
Yes.
Post. Like, how did you like transition into that?
Um, so it's I would say I have to thank my mental health background that led me to journalism, because at some point I started feeding off of the trauma of dealing with clients. And because there was a time we had over 100 clients, and it was just back to back, and it was a lot of, just mental energy being used. And I started feeling the trauma from my clients. And so I found myself getting depressed, and trying to figure out, okay, this is so much. It just felt so much at some point. And because of that, I started, trying to get more creative, right? So I studied nutrition at some point, even while I was working in mental health. And then I did an online course for 1 year at the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, studied nutrition there. From there, it just allowed my creative energy to fill, more of the spaces that I was experiencing. And that led me to doing a project called The Art of Being Alive. So it was supposed to be a coffee table book project where I interviewed people, asking them what makes you feel alive, what gives your life meaning, right? And so it was upon starting that project that was my first leg into like journalism professionally, right? Because I got invited by Ariana Huffington to be a contributor on the Huffington Post in the midst of that project. And so it became an article series on HuffPost. The Art of Being Alive series became, I think, like almost like a 20 part, if I'm not mistaken, series on HuffPost. And it was a really good platform to get my feet wet. From there, I started getting invitations to contribute for other platforms. I wrote for Elephant Journal about creativity. A lot of it was just really about creativity, about finding yourself, finding your voice, your identity, and things on depression and things on meaning, just finding meaning in life. And that really led me to connecting with people, because you know trying to do that, the trying to create the book got me to interact more with other people who just really wanted to share their story. And from there, I realized, oh, it's interesting to hear people's stories. It's interesting to, you know, interview people and get to know more about them and what their pain points are, and how they're finding meaning in life, and the amazing things they're doing in the world generally. And that was really how I got immersed in journalism, and I quit mental health field, and I moved out of the state I was in. I was in Oklahoma then, and I moved to Maryland to pursue, in the East Coast, to kind of pursue my journalism career full on. And so that was really how I took off.
Oh wow. And so how long were you like juggling like the project, like the side project and working full time before you like officially made that move?
I would say about a year plus, about almost, yeah, over a year. And really, the project led me to also travel. You know, got to travel. To like San Francisco. I met with a group, group of what would I call cohorts, who are change makers, or on the 30 change makers. So it was roughly a year I did that. I was working on the Art of Being Alive series, and I was still working on my full time job there. Before I decided to move. Yeah.
Wow. And before you made that move, did you already have like a a gig like secured in Maryland, or were you just moving and then like you planned to like look once you got there?
The good thing about my move is that life also happened, right? And what I mean by that is the fact that my job, even at that time, the Oklahoma where I was working at in Oklahoma, we're getting paid by Medicaid insurance, right? And so we're really working with the marginalized community in the city where I was in, but the government kept slashing on the budget, and our company just began to suffer financially because we weren't getting paid as much as we were getting paid before. And I was even in a master's program aiming to be a psychotherapist. So I was paying that out of my, salary working there. So I even had to quit my master's program as well because my paycheck wasn't even cutting through, paying for my master's program, keeping up with standard of living, and the government slashing on the budgets and everything there. So it was just a lot of changes happening in the field as well. So it wasn't just that I was doing the art of being alive and it was successful, right? It was just the fact of what was going on even at my job and then working on the project as well and everything all together. I was at some point I was like, okay, I have to make a move and I can't just, be comfortable or try to just, not leave, not even, my art of figure out what my art of being alive is, right?
Mm.
Almost like practicing what I'm preaching or what I'm trying to investigate. So that was really it. And luckily for me, or thankfully for me, my sister also lived in Maryland. So um, it was the fact that she was also here. That was one of the reasons why I chose to come to Maryland. I have family here in Maryland, so why not move, right? So that was really it. And it was really a trial period for me because even upon moving, my car at some point, like my best friend in Oklahoma, Melina, she was like, I'll drive with you to Maryland, like we just put the stuff in the car, we go. And there was this crazy flood that happened on our way. And our car even almost like drowned,
Oh my
in
God.
the flood. Yeah. It was, it was crazy. It was almost like, the devil really tried. We almost died in the flood. It was really bad.
Oh no.
I lost all my property. Like I only secured my books and my official documents. Those were the only things that mattered to me. The clothes and everything didn't really matter. But my books and my write ups and my official documents were the things that I could rescue out of the flood. And so we just, we spent 3 days in Missouri, I think, where we stopped, and it was just all crazy. But I mean, I guess this is just to show that nothing really comes easy, and you're gonna find trial, periods where you're just gonna go through challenges, right? Even while the world might think you're doing so amazing, you also know what you're going through behind the scenes, and it's just all about making it work and having faith, and through faith I was, my friend, I had to tell her, you know what, just fly back to Oklahoma. I would just take a flight down to Maryland, right? And, I left my car there in the shop and that was it. So that I ended up flying down here to Maryland. But it was a crazy experience given all that was happening at that time. But I
Yeah.
think the challenge made me realize that there's something bigger, right? There's got to be, I mean, I didn't die in the flood. So my life has to count for something now. Like it must count for something. So that was really, really what I got out of it, going forward.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
Ooh,
of course.
that does not sound like the ideal situation to be in when you're, making such a big move. So,
Mm-mm, it wasn't. It wasn't. It was very scary, but we made it through. Yeah.
wow. And so after you got to Maryland, like, what kind of things, like, did you get into when you got there, and how long until you officially, like, launched TanTV? Like, just,
Um. So it was, things moved really quickly. So I started just I had good network of people who I'd seen my work that I was doing with the art of being alive, and that opened more doors for me over here. I became friends with a couple of people that work at the World Bank and at the UN, and they were just really amazing friends to me. So from there, I just expanded my horizon and did couple I started covering events around here, and I covered the World Bank Global Youth Forum 2016. I've covered the UN General Assemblies, So I've covered the White House under the Obama administration. So it was just a lot of those opportunities that kept coming, and even though I never fully felt ready, right? Because I was like, well, I didn't study journalism, but yeah, you're thrown into the field, and you're just gonna make do of what's in front of you. Make the best out of the opportunity. So I found out that the stories that really inspired me or mattered to me are stories that has to do with solutions to global issues. People who are working on impact, right? On making an impact in the world, who are social entrepreneurs or who are creatives, people who or just stories on global food security, for instance, or climate change. Those stories are things that just keep me going in journalism. Like, I want to know what's happening in the world, right? And I want to be able to tell those stories. So that was really how those are the stories I started telling, and I was pitching them to HuffPost, pitching them to Forbes, and I got a couple of articles published on Forbes. Just really kept it going, and that's really how TanTV came about. Because at some point I'm like, okay, we have to tell these stories on a larger scale, on a wider scale, and using various multimedia formats to tell these stories, right? So I also went ahead to study TV production. So now I'm a public access TV producer, and just really trying to take Tan TV to the next level in terms of editorials, the kind of stories the kind of stories that we produce, and in different formats. So from TV shows to articles, article series, and to just keep it moving. Yeah.
Wow. And so you said you studied or are studying TV production.
Yeah.
Like where did you do that?
So right now I'm a TV producer with Prince George's Community Television, which is a county in Maryland, Prince George's County. And so I did know some training there, and they're just really taking me in as family, trained me hands on. So I work there as a TV producer, not full. I don't work there. I don't work for them, but I have like a public access, um, you know, uh, ID that allows me to support them in some of their own productions. It also allows me to use their studio to produce content for Tan TV as well. So that's kind of like the arrangement that we have going on. So
Wow.
yeah, so I volunteer for some of their other programs that they do to, co-produce or crew on a show, or just support it as they need me to support them. And in return, they also support me in providing me a crew, allowing me to use their studios, and to create shows for Tan TV. So right now, we're creating a show called Africa's Triumph, and we've done 2 episodes so far. Once we do a couple of more episodes, I'll be launching that out to the public, but it's not yet launched out yet. But it's called Africa's Triumph, and which is great because we get to use a TV studio. It's a full on production. I mean, it's crazy. It's like a 15-man crew. Yeah.
Wow. That's so cool. And is a deal like that common, or is that something that you negotiated and just
I'm not sure about other counties per se, but I think that right now it's like starting from the ground up, right? It's really being a self starter. That's really it. So for anybody who wants to really do something like this, check out your county networks, right? The public access stations where you are. There's always a public access television station where you are. And, it's like just go there, ask questions, check it out. There are different policies for different stations, I bet, but there's always something that you can figure out once you approach it that way. And from there, right now I'm looking at PBS Studios, to publish some of our, to publish some of our shows or even use their studios in producing some of our shows going forward. So that's kind of where my eyes on right now, looking at PBS and other bigger platforms as we grow. So for now, we just right now we're also trying to like raise funds because it's expensive to produce a show because you're looking at set design, you're looking at all that stuff. But I'm also securing sponsorships, which is helpful, right? And also right now I'm going to be launching a fundraiser for TanTV because we need to put it out there. I mean, the work is important and I can't do it by myself. But if nobody knows about what you're doing, then it's almost like, what's the point? So
Mm.
right now, I'm taking a bold move, and I'm going to put out a fundraiser on probably Kickstarter or Go. We're probably going to just start with a GoFund and maybe see how that does, and then maybe go to a Kickstarter platform. But really, just you know, talking to everybody about what the vision is for Tan TV and where we're headed. I know that if we keep going and keep, doing what we're doing, we're going to make headway. And so it's I'm excited about it. It seems daunting, but hey, you are alive for a reason, and for me I feel like this is my purpose on earth, to tell stories that matter.
And where do you see Tan TV like in the next 5 years?
Oh wow. um hmm. I see, the thing is technology is moving so fast, right? And it's almost like old media versus new media, which one is going to stay,
Mm.
right? So in my mind, I want us to be on cable. Like I want us to have our own broadcasting network and on cable, just like Oprah Winfrey's network. But um, but also the main thing really is reaching people. So how do we reach people around the world with our stories and the content that we produce? And that has to do with like, using different digital streaming platforms, right? So
Mm.
I see us really like, by then, we have our app and everything going forward. We're just really increasing in numbers in audience that knows us. So 5 years, I'm hoping that, we can reach millions of people around the world with our content, right? And we can have bigger budgets to tell better, to tell more stories and to expand on our storytelling abilities, right? To really being known as the number one social impact storytelling platform around the world. And that's my hope, that we can reach more people and we can have more budget to you know create more unique content out there.
Nice. And so you said that you were going to be working on the fundraising campaign and then that you're also working on like sponsorships. Like,
Yes.
how are you going about securing sponsors for Tan TV?
Basically, just reaching out to everybody, friends, family, looking for angel investors, going to figuring out exactly what we need. For instance, the set for Africa's Triumph is sponsored by a furniture store called Furniture Place here in Maryland. And so they were happy to be a part of what we're creating. And so they sponsored us with the furniture, and they dropped it at the studios, they picked it back up. So every time we have a taping, that's they committed to doing that for us. So which is a big help, because if I was to fund creating a set from scratch, it's going to cost me over $5,000 to create a set, right? Or even
Wow.
more. So having that kind of sponsor be like, here, I'm here to partner with you and support you is really good. You know, I have a bunch of other people who are who own businesses, and when you just share the vision, they see the passion, they know you're serious, you seem credible enough, and they see evidence of what TanTV is doing. They're willing to support. So sometimes you get you get a lot of no's, but even in the midst of the no's, it just means not yet. But there are other people who I just say yes right away. So I thank God that He's given me the grace to like keep pushing, and we keep we just keep pushing. We keep pushing.
Yes.
We're relentless. That's that's really it. It's just being relentless.
Wow. And so when you are like, so for like Africa's Triumph, so how do
Yeah.
you go about like finding like people that you want to like feature, like the change makers and things like that? Like, how are you going about doing that?
Um, Referrals, and also just being observant, and always you know I was just on Voice of America like 2 weeks ago, and I was asked that same question, funny enough. So that's, I guess that's a really good question. It's really just about being a scout. Like I see myself now as a talent scout. I'm always watching who is doing what's going on, I have my editorial lens like fully on, like just shining through. So I'm always like putting, just always looking out and talking to people, figuring out, do you know who is doing what? You just kind of see it around you. So, funny enough, in every environment, I don't even think you have to look too far away. Especially when it comes to the African community these days, there's so much negativity that is easily spread around about Africans. But on the other side, there are a lot of positive things about, that people do, you don't even get to know those stories. The
Mm,
person that owns this business as an entrepreneur and has been doing it for 20 something years, or the new person who is a founder of an NGO and is really like, making a big difference around the world. They're your neighbors, your next door neighbors, like they're everywhere around you. You just have to, we're just lucky to have a small platform to start telling those stories. And I just feel like that, finding change makers is not difficult, right? Because
mm,
it's the everyday people doing amazing stuff, but their stories really never get told, right? And sometimes it's not about making the millions, right? Because you only hear about people who have made millions on Forbes or CNN, right? But every
mm.
day there are people who make a difference in other people's lives, and really, Tan TV right now, and I hope even in the long run, that's really what we want to do. Is even the everyday voices. We want to be that shoulder for people, and that platform that gets to tell these stories of everyday people making impact, and locally and globally.
Wow, that's so cool. Thank you for sharing that. And
Yeah.
I hope to continue to watch TanTV and, just watch your growth and all that stuff. So I'm excited to
Yes,
do that.
we'll be launching the fundraiser soon by the grace of God this week, and we're on Instagram at TanTV Studios, which we probably just changed to TanTV to make it easier. So just check TanTV on Instagram and YouTube TanTV, in Facebook TanTV, Twitter as well TanTV. Yeah.
Yes, and I'll make sure all those are in the show notes and things so people can easily just find those pages.
Thank you. I would really appreciate that. Yes.
Yeah, and I also wanted to ask, I read that you lead a network called the Global Development Youth Leaders.
Oh yes, yes.
Yeah.
That's a fun one. So that's kind of an extension of Tan TV, but it's like the not non-profit arm of Tan TV, I would say. And it's a community that is just doing amazing on its own, and it's on Facebook. It's grown to over 17,000 members right now, and it keeps growing on its own. People are using it to share the work that they're doing when it comes to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and a lot of people around the world who are just like young leaders in small communities in developing countries who are working on girls' education. They're working on, like, climate change or something with the environment. They're just doing something small in their own unique ways, right? They've taken this community as theirs to share, as a platform where they share their own stories. So every day somebody's posting about some new opportunity or something they're doing in India or Nepal, and you just get to learn about, and they just support each other in the community. So it's honestly, it's a user generated content there. They do their own thing, and for me, I it's also registered as a 501c in Maryland, sorry, in Virginia, as well. And I have a board of directors. Right now, we're just really looking, putting out requests for grants so that we can really be a support system for members of the community in terms of education, in terms of funding some of the works that they're doing, of building a network of mentorship for them. So those are some of the plans that we have for GDYL going forward. And so we're looking at kicking it off 2020. Right now, we're just doing legwork in terms of putting out grant requests and just making inquiries on how to really make this an NGO that can, stand on its own.
Wow, that's so cool. Yeah, I looked it up on Facebook and I saw how many members were in there, and
Yeah.
I was so shocked. I was like, that's so amazing that, these young people are like, sharing all the things that they're working on and,
Yeah.
trying to connect with each other and stuff.
Yeah. We get about 100 requests a day of
Wow.
people wanting to join the group. There's something about it, and it's just a testament of, the hunger that is out there. People want to be a part of a network that is out to do good, that is out to tell stories of, of sustainability, right, of what's going on in the world, and they just want to be part of the solution. So everybody there is really a solutions person, thinking about how can I be part of the solution to the world's greatest challenges. And that's what TanTV is about. That's what GDYL is about. That's what I'm about. And the community I'm hoping to really develop is a community of do-gooders and change makers.
Wow. That's so amazing. And what would you say is your like your vision for Africa, or what excites you about the future of Africa?
Technology. Um, Technology. I
Mm.
think technology would, if the governments of these nations in Africa can really begin to, how do I put it? If they can pay more attention, like Ghana is doing amazing, Rwanda is doing amazing in terms of looking at the youth, right? Because the youth is the largest workforce in Africa right now, and if nations can focus on the youth and try to see how they can take care of unemployment, right,
Mm.
and bring in technology, technology will solve a lot of things, provide jobs. In terms of just empowering people to create like apps that would automate some of the difficult things. Like maybe we have Uber here or whatever. Like technology will solve the problem of food security in Africa. It would looking at technology, I think, would just take the continent much more forward. But for that to work, of course, there are other things that needs to be taken care of, right? People need to just have basic amenities, right, before they start thinking of, in that much progressive terms. But I'm
Mm.
excited. There's this young lad called Idris Sandu, and I'm so proud of him. I haven't met him yet, but he's one of the people I really want to feature in Tan TV. He just got featured on Forbes, funny enough, like 2 weeks ago, and
Wow.
he's in Ghana. He just recently traveled to Ghana and maybe Nigeria, but he's really he's like a tech genius. He was working with Nipsey Hussle before he died. He's working with Kanye West on some different things. but he's like the face of what, like an African in technology. Idris Sando is like that face right now. Um, yeah, and so having someone like him go back home to meet government officials is exciting for me, right? Because
Mm.
he's in the in of what's going on over here, and he knows a lot of stuff that he can introduce to the continent. So we need more people like that, and I guess just all of us in the diaspora looking at ways that we can give back to, to Africa. We can give back to where we come from, in Africa. So for me, that's exciting. There's so many, like there's just a lot of, I right now I outsource some of the stuff we do at TanTV, and I work with a lot of young people back home in different parts of, in different, African countries. I work with them, and they're really really good. A lot of the work they do, and even some of our editorial, some of our voiceovers is done from there.
Wow.
So yeah, and it's not even, as I won't even say it's cheaper. I was making fun of one of my, one of the people I work with that is based in Nigeria. I was making fun of him the other day. I was like, "You guys are not cheap." Like it's there's no. They just have their, honestly, their standard is even better when it comes to delivery, because there are no jobs there, so
Mm.
they're willing to work with us over here to produce what we want to produce, but then we're helping them over there with the economy when we give them jobs from here, right? Because they're so, but it doesn't even mean that but you're not getting bad standard working. No, somehow I feel like the work they do over there, even though it might just be a little bit lesser than what you pay over here, but at the same time, the standard is just impeccable. Like impeccable standard that they have there. When they deliver, like they will go overboard for you. They just, so it's also a way of keeping them employed. So we can, I mean, there are amazing ways to work with people from, work with people back home, empower a community back home, build this, not just building a school, building a community back home,
Mm.
and giving people jobs. Like you will be surprised how much, like, it doesn't even cost anything to create employment for, people back, back home. So those are things that we just have to think about, how to merge that gap that exists between the diaspora and those at home. And there are many ways to do that.
Wow, I love that idea. Like I've also been looking into like impact sourcing and that sort of thing, and
Yeah.
just how big of a difference it can really make in
Hmm.
communities like back home especially. And so how do you go about, let's say, like recruiting someone to do like a voiceover or or editing or any sort of work that you would want outsourced?
For me, I have a strong network there. My parents are there. My cousins are there. So it's always, one of, just many ways that I probably through contact. I have even friends that are here, um, always have people back home. So even it's so easy, because if you know one African, right, one someone from Ghana, Nigeria, anywhere, just talk to them and find out if they have a cousin. Like,
Yes.
right? Just find out if they have a cousin back home, or a brother, a relative back home. Like that's your answer right there.
Mm.
Before you know it, you're connected, right? A cousin knows a cousin, or knows a friend that does this and does that. Boom. you know
Wow.
so it's just, if any most of us have relatives that are still back home, and
Hmm.
so it's just a matter of having that conversation, knowing exactly what you need to get done or what you want to accomplish, engaging somebody, a friend from here, to connect you with someone there. They always look, anything you want to get done, you will find somebody for it. But there, so it's just a matter of knowing what you want to do.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. I
Yeah.
really love that and hope um, people listening can also look into doing something like that and giving people back home jobs.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
I love that. Awesome. And so I think the last question that I had for you is what is one of the biggest lessons that you've learned so far as an entrepreneur um, trying to create this new media platform, TanTV?
Oh, wow. Biggest lesson I've learned. Honestly, I would say to look at yourself as a holistic being, right? In the sense that when you're fit physically, it'll help you mentally, it will help you spiritually. Like just taking care of yourself. And I think it's so important because entrepreneurs sometimes you work in isolation. Sometimes you're panicked about what's next, what can you do next, or what's the next right thing to do. You're anxious about a lot of things, about money, about funding the business, about not moving fast enough, about all the things that entrepreneurs go through. It's almost like torture, you know. It's like, why don't you just go and get a 9 to 5 and not think about anything else? Just do your job, go home, eat, sleep, whatever. But the point is, when you have a demand, like I feel like for entrepreneurs or anybody that's a self starter, like the demands on your shoulders, it just feels like you have to do it. It's almost like you can't sleep, you can't. It's almost like you just have that thing in you that's driving you. But in the midst of achieving or going for what wakes you up at night, right? In the midst of battling with that to be a successful entrepreneur, it's always important to stay grounded. So for me, my biggest lesson is learning how to stay grounded. So I'm a strong Christian by the grace of God, and my faith is important to me. Physical activities, working out, that's also important to me. So I try to go to the gym like 3 times a week. I just got myself a trainer. I'm also trying to train to be a fitness coach down the line as well because I feel like it's so important. I know what it's done for me. So one of my goals now is like I'm really like training myself so I can help other people with their fitness goals. So and then just mentally as well, it helps to be. Sometimes I wake up so early and I sometimes my sister will be like, why are you waking up so early? But I do that before the depression kicks in. I beat the depression, like I'm up, I go to the gym, so like I try to get myself in the state of mind that will help the business, right? Because so when you look at yourself as a holistic being, it just goes a long way in in helping you manage the anxieties of being an entrepreneur. And I think for me, that's the biggest lesson I've learned is, managing the anxieties of being an entrepreneur. Just has to do with, making sure you're, I don't know if there's anything called balance, but just making sure you're whole, right?
Mm.
And of course, family is a big help in terms of just having the love from family. That's great. And sometimes even when you don't have family around, finding that one person that you can connect with is always a good thing too. So we're lucky if we have one person that supports us in our goals, right? And it's just to practice gratitude every time. Don't take people for granted. Love your friends and the people that show you love. Love them back and give. Just give yourself to others. For me, my biggest growth has been giving myself to my family wholeheartedly and being a support system. My sister was terribly sick for the past 2 years, and she just came out of a terrible illness. She had pneumonia, and she was put on life support for like 2 years. And she
Wow.
just, yeah, she just recovered in February and went back again to the hospital in May, right? And so it's been a trial period for my family and I. I had to start a campaign for her called Hope After Life Support, and so we still, just that whole experience alone has been a life lesson on its own that, there's something when it comes to being selfless, when it comes to giving yourself to, to your family or to a cause. And it just makes life more meaningful and it makes you grounded, makes you appreciate even the very little things. So those are some of my lessons. I could go on and on.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, I really appreciate it. And I'm sure the listeners will as well. And thank you so much again for being a guest on Dear Diaspora.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm honored and I can't wait to hear the episode and share it around. So just let me know when it's published and I'll be happy to share it around.
So many takeaways and gems throughout that episode. I really love what she had to say about looking at yourself as a holistic being. Like, I feel like that's one of the most important things you can do. Taking care of yourself, your mental health, your physical health, because if you don't do those things, it's very hard for you to really follow through with your goals as an entrepreneur, or any sort of like side projects or hustles, or even just in your regular career. You always show up better when you're taking better care of yourself. So I really loved what she had to say about that, and overall I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope you did as well. So I'll make sure to link to TanTV so that you can check out her platform, her YouTube channel, and just so you can learn a little bit more about her. So thank you again for tuning in to episode 9 of Dear Diaspora, and I can't wait to continue to share the stories of change makers across the diaspora. So be sure to share this episode with someone that you think would enjoy it. And always, you can find Dear Diaspora on social media at Dear Diaspora, like everywhere. And you can always email the show at deardiasporashow@gmail.com. Thanks for listening to Dear Diaspora. If you like what you hear, subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes. You can find us on Instagram at Dear Diaspora, or visit our website at deardiasporashow.com. Thank you, and talk to you next week.